everybody, welcome back to yet another episode of Worship Ministry Nuggets by Ruth Stevens. I am Ruth Stevens, and I know that your life will never be the same again. If you are new to this channel, I want to urge you to subscribe and press the notification button so that you can be notified every time I post a new video. Thank you very much for joining us. Sit tight and let's get to it. So my story started back when I was in high school, when I got born again in Form 3. Now that's when I started my journey with the Lord, and I also started my journey leading worship when I got saved. I got saved in January 17th, 2010. Interesting, yeah? I got saved when I was in Form 3, and my journey now with the Lord began. I became so hungry for God, and I just began to desire to be used of God. And that's how slowly by slowly I started singing in the CU. I started leading worship in the CU circles, and slowly by slowly now God started building me up from one level of glory to another. So now in 2010, while I started my journey, I lost my mother in August 2010, the same year that I got born again, and the same year that I made a decision to serve the Lord. So you can imagine it was the hardest season of my life, because I could not understand. I had so many questions for God, because, hey, how can you just come from getting saved and make a solemn decision to serve God, and then such a tragedy happens to you? And I remember that season was so hard. It was so hard. And the only thing that pushed me through, that carried me throughout that season, was worship. One of the songs that carried me through that dark season of my life was Marion Shako's song, I Will Worship You, Lord. It goes like, I will worship you, Lord, with all of my heart, from the rising of the sun to the setting of the same. I just couldn't understand why that song was playing so much in my spirit from the time we took her from the mortuary, going to burying her, and even the entire season, because you know healing continues for a while. So that song kept playing in my heart, and I remember I made a vow within myself, no matter what happened, I will still serve God. And from there on, when I got to Form 4, I still continued leading praise and worship in CU. And immediately after high school, I joined the School of Ministry, and I continued doing worship in the School of Ministry. And then when I was 19 years old, that's when now I met my spiritual father, Apostle Eric Mwangi Mungai, and he entrusted me to be the worship leader. Hey, I'm telling you, what a crazy assignment for a 19-year-old, because number one, you're very young, fresh from high school, and the only experience you have is leading students. So here I am leading adults who have been in worship teams longer than I have been. And so it was a challenge, very scary at the same time. And that's when I got to understand this statement that says that God does not call the qualified, but rather he qualifies the called. Because if I look at myself back then, I was really not qualified for the job. How can a 19-year-old take up a responsibility of leading praise and worship, just being a worship team leader for a group of people who are older than me, in their 30s, in their 20s? I'm even scared as I'm talking about it. Imagine. So now that's when God gave me that assignment. And I want to urge somebody who's out there and you think probably what God has given you is a little bit too big for your hands. I want to urge you, because God does not look at one's qualifications. You know, as long as you're available for him to serve you, he will equip you for the job. And that's what happened to me. Honestly speaking, God equipped me for the job that I just got. 19 years old, how can you explain that, you know? So God equipped me one by one as I was working with my spiritual covering, Apostle Eric Mwangi and Reverend Vicky Mwangi. They walked with me, they guided me. God continued pouring out wisdom in me. And by the help of other mentors, like I want to specifically mention Pastor Liz, from Papa Center. You have been an amazing person. Thank you so much. And also Madam Imani Odero from JCC Parklands. You were amazing. You did an awesome job with me, and I thank God for that. And God continually equipped me for the job. Slowly by slowly, let me tell you, the Bible says that we go from glory to glory, from faith to faith. If you start a journey with God, there is no going back. You go from glory to glory. That is it. So you go from one level to another, from one level to another, from one level to another. And the journey did not come easy. It had its own challenges. Number one, I had my own personal issues I was dealing with. Oh my God. The first personal issue that I was dealing with was, number one, grief and pain. Heart issues. Because number one, I remember I told you I lost my mom when I was in Form 3. So the healing, I think I got completely healed from that 8 years later. So you can imagine, you can do the calculation. But yes, one of the personal issues I faced was grief and emotional pain. And as long as I kept serving, in the ministry of my spiritual covering, the more God healed me, the more I began to get peace with myself. I began to accept the situation. I began to move on slowly by slowly. God just healed me, one step of healing to another, one step of healing to another. This is a story for another day. And then another issue that I had to deal with was the issue of unforgiveness. I'm telling you, I had been hurt before by people that were very close to me, and I felt like I needed to take revenge on them. And so sometimes you can hold a grudge in you and you think that you're doing a favor because they hurt you, and so it is them who are supposed to ask you for forgiveness. Unforgiveness was such an issue for me until it hindered my ministry. I remember one time my spiritual covering noticed that, and he told me, Ruth, if you don't deal with this unforgiveness, it will become a hindrance in your worship ministry. You can't go to the next level. And I remember I took a season of prayer and fasting to let go of every pain that I had gone through in my past. I let go of every issue, every name that I was called because of one reason or the other. And so somehow, some way, I let go and I began to forgive every person that had hurt me. And so with letting go, I began now to shoot even higher in my levels of ministering. Now, those were some of the challenges that I faced in my worship ministry journey, and I will be continuing on the same next week. So ensure that you stay tuned, and I know that indeed God will bless you. Ensure that you subscribe and press the notification button so that when I upload the video, you are the first to be notified. So indeed, God bless you, and see you next Wednesday. I have been your precious host, Ruth Stevens.